And we're going to start with a reading from Emmett Fox, who is one of the people who helped develop the science of mind, or what is called Center for Spiritual Living now. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, for August the 11th,
No
the
problem.
title from Emmett Fox is I Am That I Am. And there's a very brief scripture here from Exodus chapter 19, verse 16. And there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud. These are dramatic expressions of the change of consciousness as we move away from the common things of life to the higher things. In these days of the Exodus, the conditions of the outer world answered very quickly to man's thoughts because people believed it was possible. Moses took his people across the Red Sea by the power of thought, and he was able to do that because in those days people believed in the power of thought. They believed that God could take them across the Red Sea dry shod, and he did. Moses had the true knowledge of God from his father's people, the Hebrews. It was the historical mission of the Hebrews to teach that God is not a limited corporeal being, but incorporeal, infinite, and divine mind. Moses saw clearly the unity of God and man, and the unity of man and man. He got more than a flash of what we call the cosmic consciousness, and that was his illumination. And then he realized that he must give this to humanity.
Thank you. I see we have another new person. Welcome, Jennifer. Since we have three new people, let me give you a basic concept that all of us, I think, here work with. First of all, there's many paths home, so we're not going to tell you what to believe. Your path is your own, and our belief is the divine welcomes all of us in our own paths. We also believe we're all made of star stuff. We're all made of God stuff, however you want to define it. So we are all connected, and we are all part of the divine, however you care to define it. So this is our reference point. So since Jennifer has just joined us, last week, Dave wasn't there either. So we got a lot of people who weren't here last week. I talked about, the title was Retreat, and it was about the need that all of us should follow of having time apart from this world to allow for spiritual growth, for connection. And today I'm sort of doing an extension of that because as part of God's stuff, we also can all, as Fox talks about, expect connection of all kinds. And this topic was brought sort of forcefully to me. There was an article a couple of days ago in one of the news sources I read about twins, both of whom have gone into ministry, one of whom has fashioned himself as a prophet who speaks of God, and he says God has anointed Trump, and he's selling all sorts of things you can buy from him. And he also has several writers who are accusing him of plagiarism because his prophecies are things they have written quite separate from that. So in other words, my words here, a fraud. His twin is one of those accusing him of fraud because some of the twin's private writings the guy accessed and then started using them as his words from God. The twin lives in a community of homeless. He views his job as supporting those who need help, need to feel loved of God, as opposed to this other guy who's charging you $12.95 to be taught how to hear the prophecy yourself. And his, I gather, has something like 280,000 followers, all following the preachings of the far right. That's not what divine communication is all about. And reading this, I was reminded of a time when I was, back when I was a professional psychic, and also, for those of you who are new, I am a lift-on therapist, and that will come into play in the conversations from time to time. I was doing demonstrations and offering psychic readings at a small psychic fair here in town, and I happened to be placed next to one of the best-known, biggest-names psychics in Cincinnati, and I wasn't that busy. I couldn't avoid hearing what he was saying to his clients, who were stacked up. But my God, Sister Pepper, the one who founded our home church, used to warn us about all the tricks that psychics would play when they weren't really psychic. And this guy was doing it. Oh, I see this image. Does it mean something to you? And whatever the client said, then he'd riff off that for a few minutes to use up a few more minutes of the half hour they were buying. Oh, I see this image. Does it mean something to you? He wasn't doing psychic readings, but he was pretending, and he was making good money at it. That is not what we're talking about when we are talking about divine communication, or, as Fox is talking about, believing that the power of God can do things. Here's a contrasting example. Someone whom I respect, I'm glad to know. Name is Jeff Poe. He runs a psychic fair in Indianapolis. And the last fair, I passed by and was passing the time of day. He said, I just had an interesting experience. He said, I was sitting at the table taking in entry fees, and this guy walked in. I looked at him and said, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at a funeral. The guy says, oh my God, I forgot all about it, and runs out the door. Now, that is genuine information from the divine. And Jeff Poe is a very mild, humble person. Now, the key for you is, all of us, because we have that spark of God within, because we are made of God stuff, we're part of the universal conscious. All of us have the opportunity to receive information from what I'll call the shamanic side or the divine side of life. But don't hold yourself to the idea that it has to be whoom, earth-shaking. Like, oh my God, you're supposed to be at a funeral. I've never had that happen to me. I wish it would. I have no idea why I don't. But my messages come quietly. So when you think of Emmett Fox's message, don't berate yourself because you've never been able to part a body of water so you could walk across dry shod. Or that you could take a dead battery and get it to fire up an engine. Yeah, I've heard of things happening on occasion, but don't hold yourself to that big an exposition. In Quakerism, and I am Quaker for those of you who are new here, we talk about the still small voice, the spark of God that's within. All of us have that. And in Quakerism, our responsibility is to listen to that still small voice and to allow it to grow in strength as we grow spiritually. So, what does that mean in terms of being what Quakers call tender in the spirit, open to the moving of the divine, of God within you? Here are some ideas various people have given that might help you have a grasp of it. Divine messages, one writer, and I forgot to write whom, are more like a fog or ghost. You can perceive its form only when you're not looking too hard. But when you try to put your arms around it, it dissipates. Another one, I don't know why I forgot to give attributions here. Open yourself to the serenity of wordless connection with the divine. Allow yourself to know yourself as an extension of divine love. J. Brent Bill, in his book Holy Silence, writes, on one level, God took care of Jesus by Jesus taking care of Jesus. That level was Jesus using silence. Jesus knew that taking silence in the midst of busyness was part of soul care. I'm going to read that again because this is something that I hope you can walk every day with. Jesus knew that taking silence in the midst of busyness was a part of soul care. In a sense, I suggest that you always keep yourself at least a little distant from your busyness. And make sure your feet are at least an inch or two above the floor, because then you're less likely to be swept away by the movie. And for you new folks, a spiritual friend of mine, now long deceased, died one day. He was at that point an atheist. Found himself floating over his body as the paramedics were trying to bring him back. And as he told it, I realized, oh, this is reality. That's the movie. That's one way of maintaining enough separation so the worldly trifugalities that we all face don't have to knock us completely off stride. Now, when the divine does communicate with us, there are two basic ways that it can happen. Sometimes divine informations show up without warning. Other times they show up when we've requested them. Let me give some examples. Sister Pepper, the woman who founded our home church, now she's long gone, told us of a time when she was relaxing in a bubble bath and suddenly found herself thinking how easy it would be to go to the kitchen, get a knife, get back in the bubble bath and slit her wrists and just bleed out. And then she recounted, she shook herself because she knew that wasn't her thought. That was completely foreign to her. So she got out of the bubble bath and did some quick thinking and praying. Who in my congregation is feeling suicidal? Figured out who it was, got hold of them, did an intervention. Everything was fine. Or a more lighthearted story on my part. Back when I was in advertising, I was driving between Lebanon, Ohio, where I'd had a meeting with a client, and was it Miamisburg? Miamisburg, I think. And I was going down a couple back roads. I came to a stop sign, and I was planning to go straight through. And all of a sudden, I felt a nudge in my ribs, and in my head, I saw a finger pointing this way. Well, I can get there that way too. So I turn right, and a quarter mile down the road, by a gravel driveway, is a small sign that says, "Fresh gooseberries for sale." I love gooseberries. You cannot find gooseberries in this area of Ohio. I pulled in. They had 2 pints left. I bought them both. Both things came out of nowhere. Interruptive messages. Both of them had positive results. I got to enjoy gooseberries for the summer. Someone was alive who had been thinking about slitting their wrists. Smaller interruptive messages happen too. One that happens often to me, I find myself suddenly, shall we say, out of the blue, thinking of someone that I haven't been in contact with a while. When that happens, I make a mental note I'd better get hold of them, because almost without exception, something really good is happening or something not very good is happening to them. In either way, I should be there in connection with them to celebrate or to support them. Now, the key is, I haven't been thinking about them. Why all of a sudden are they not going away from my thoughts? So that's interruptive, but not a big interrupter. I could ignore it and be busy with other things. That's why it's valuable not to be lost in the wash of everything that's going on. Another time, I was getting ready. This was back when I was a touring artist. In a day or two, we were going to be leaving on a trip, and I'd had the van in the week before for something, for an oil change, and I suddenly got the feeling I needed to take that van in again before we left. So I took it in, told the mechanic I'd pay him for an hour to check the van over thoroughly. Sure enough, one of the belts was cracked in a way that was not really obvious, and if we had been driving it, as I recall, it was like a 300-mile trip, we would have been stranded someplace. Again, out of the blue, but it wouldn't leave me alone. So in your walk, be open to those nudges, those things that aren't fitting with what you're thinking at the moment. Because you don't know. Actually, I'm remembering another one in terms of the big interruptive. There was an article in Guideposts. A woman was talking about she and her husband were in line for a demonstration helicopter ride at the local airports. You know, you pay $20, you get 5 minutes in the air, and they were the next ones up. And when the helicopter landed, the people in front of them got off. All of a sudden, the one said, "We can't go. The two of you behind, please take it. We're not ready to go yet." Helicopter got up, came down, crashed. The couple died. Why wasn't it them? We don't know what the vine had, but the vine interrupted and she listened. That doesn't mean if you suddenly get the urge to jump off the Ohio River Bridge without a bungee cord that you should do it. Bear in mind that the divine is love. Walk in that love, expect that love. Please reflect that love wherever you go, because so many people are hurting. But if you get something like that, call me or call Phyllis and we'll get you back on the ground real quick, because the divine wants the best for us. We as the divine deserve the best for us, and messages that come are there to help us or to help others move forward in life. Now, those are what I call interruptive messages. You can also request messages. And those of you who've been with us before, you know that every service, the divine provides me with what people call a psychic message from the Spirit for everybody who's in attendance. Those I regard as requested messages. So, how do I do it? If you've watched me, I stop. What you don't see inside is I am creating a special spiritual silence inside where the divine can trickle in information to share with you. Sometimes it's an image, sometimes it's a set of words, sometimes it's a feeling. But I have to make the room. I suppose we could actually call it, create a spiritual message room to get the message. Now, the problem is when you're getting messages, how can you be certain that it's a genuine spiritual message from the Spirit as opposed to something toxic? Because there is toxic energy around here. It can get to all of us. First of all, those of you who don't have a copy of the Prayer for Protection, either print it out when Lori puts it up later on when we say it, call us, let us send you some nice pink prayer cards to carry with you and to use every day. We have tested them. It repels toxic energy from you. So that's part one. Part two, Sister Pepper always taught us, if you're getting messages from the Spirit, always request that the information come through the filter of the love of Jesus Christ. Because she said, then you will never be led astray. And one of my own checkpoints, information comes to me, I always do a double check myself. Is this information, can it be in any way connected with something I've been thinking or doing myself in my day-to-day mind? If the answer is yes, then whatever I tell the person for whom I'm giving the message, I caution them that this may or may not be a divine message because it's possible it's coming from me. But if that message is completely out of the blue, then I'm reasonably comfortable that it is a divine message. And third, if you are getting a message to share with someone, or if you are being given a message, listen carefully. Is it a message that comes in grace and good and love? Are you giving a message in grace and good and love? Or are you giving something that could be interpreted by someone as harmful to them? Example, because I've actually had people tell me this has happened to them. Back when I was a professional psychic, I can think of 3 people offhand, come in absolutely terrified because they had gone to a psychic who had told them they were going to die young, or that they were going to have a massive disease and it was going to be a big struggle. Right. Tell me what good that's doing. You've just labeled them. Now, maybe that psychic did see that they are facing some sort of illness. What would be a better way to give that message that would be more loving? I've had it happen. And my response is, maintaining your physical health is really important for the quality of your life and your service to the divine. And I encourage you sometime soon, go in for a regular checkup and just make sure that everything's fine. Okay, now, which is more likely to generate an ultimate good? Which is more loving to do? So, do set your minds, I encourage you, if you are willing, because God's not going to tell you things if you don't want. Story about that. One of the fellows who used to work with me in an ad agency was fairly rock-ribbed Catholic. And one day he told me while he was at Catholic Mass, all of a sudden he found himself flying over Cincinnati, looking out at Cincinnati from the eyes of an eagle. Now, those of us used to shamanic events, to spiritual events, yeah, that can happen because we're all star stuff. He decided, didn't matter if God had done this for him, he wanted no part of it. Thank you, God, leave me alone. He found himself back in his chair, in his corporeal body. He's never had another experience again. You have that option. But please have the courage to allow the divine to expand your experience. Be open, though carefully, to messages from the divine, to even being guided to lay a hand on someone who's hurting, or not even to touch them, because a lot of people have been abused and they don't want touch. But your love, your healing energy, divine healing energy, is just as effective this way as this way. You don't know how you're going to be called. But if your choice is that you want to walk with the divine, build with the divine, become an ever closer representative of divine love, allow it to lead you where it does. Allow your plans to sometimes go ways that you didn't expect. I never expected to be doing this stuff, let me tell you. Have the faith that God will prepare you for whatever you are called into. Know that Phyllis and I, and for that matter, Lori, Karen, Dave Johnson, Lori C., Cheryl Ann, all of us have different experiences working with the divine. And if you need sounding boards, we're here for you. Because all of us are walking in the fog. Just as Fox said, just as I quoted, the divine is not something you can hold on to. What was that quote? Let me read that quote to you again. Where is it here? Divine messages are more like fog or a ghost. You can perceive its form only when not looking too hard. But when you try to put your arms around it, it disappears. When you allow and decide that you're going to permit to happen what the divine prepares, no matter how many right turns it is, and give praise to whatever's happening, because that allows more good to happen. And if it is a lemon, can turn it into lemonade. Yay. Because we're all in this together. And the more we can raise our spirit, our frequencies, to come closer to divine frequency, the better for us, the better for God, the better for this world. And Lord knows this world right now needs all the love, all the higher frequency beings wandering around that's possible. And each and every one of us being that spark of God, being that God stuff, can play a role if we choose to, can hear messages if we allow it, and if we allow ourselves to experience and be open to the silence in which messages come. And if a message comes out of the unexpected, pay attention. But remember, also always evaluate. If it's telling you to jump off a bridge, probably not God. So a final reading from the Persian mystic poet Rumi. Oh, actually, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. One of the things I've noticed, and psychic I used to know up in Chicago complained about the same thing. Often enough, when you request messages, even if you request a message for yourself, you're not going to get it unless it's an interrupted one. I've never received a message to me. Others have given them to me. My friend in Chicago complained, and he was a great psychic. He complained, he was also a cab driver in his off time. He said, I was never warned when those 3 passengers got in that they were going to rob me. So there are limitations, shall we say. But walk forward, head held high, listening, observing silence, keeping your feet a couple inches off the ground so you know what the reality is and what the movie is. And then, to quote Rumi, keep silent, because the world of silence is a vast fullness. I'm going to say it again. Keep silent, because the world of silence is a vast fullness. So that's what I have to say. Anyone have something to contribute? If so, just hold your hand up. Cheryl Ann? Yeah.
Many years ago, before I got into psychic stuff, for lack of a better word, and I had been, I just wasn't aware of it. Anyway, I had a prophetic dream. I belonged to a sailing club, and we were on an outing in Philadelphia, and we would sleep overnight. And that night I had a dream that driving back to New Jersey, I had to go through Philadelphia, and I ended up getting off by mistake on this road, and I actually saw the number of the road in my dream. And it was so long ago, I don't remember if I was killed, but something really bad happened. And I woke up and I was like, it shook me. Well, later that day, I'm driving home, it's dark out, and I'm on whatever, 95, whatever the major road is. And somehow I end up in downtown Philadelphia. And I get this creepy feeling. And all of a sudden, I'm driving down a one-way road, and I see the sign. It's the number of the road from my dream. And I was like, I don't give a damn that it's a one-way road. I turned around and drove down the one-way road because there was no way I was going forward. There's no way I was going forward. And I'm convinced to this day that it was prophecy and I was saved from whatever badness was there.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Somebody else with something to share. Lori
Exactly
Kay.
how far out do you want to go?
Hmm?
Exactly how far out would you like to go? Because I have a story that could easily be called crazy. But back in my 30s, I was living in Massachusetts and I met this great saint named Shiva Bala Yogi. Little tiny guy, like, 4'9" or something, delightful, sweet guy. Anyway, bunch of us followed him around. Did I already tell you guys this story? No, I don't think so. So a bunch of us were following him around to different places where he was going and giving meditations and things like that. And it was maybe, I don't know, 12 or 15 of us. And after one such event, we were all driving back from some island or something, whatever. We're driving back to the main Boston area from some outlying place. And we had just left the place where we had done the meditation and everything. And in the meditation, I had seen something that I assumed was lights from the road because it was like a dull light that would come on and then go off and come on. So I thought it was just like cars going by. But then I noticed when we exited the building that we were too far from the road to see any lights. So I thought, that's odd. I don't usually see things in meditation. But okay, whatever it was, that's interesting. We're driving back and the mountains to our left, there's a dull light over them that's coming on and going off and coming on and going off. And I said, oh my gosh, that's exactly like the light in my meditation. And somebody sitting next to me went, oh my God, me too. So we got in this big conversation about how we don't usually see things in our meditations. We'd seen exactly the same thing. How fascinating, wonder what that means. And the next day we went to the airport to see Swami off and his translator. And one of us asked him, he said, Swami, we saw some like lights over the mountains, and we'd also seen it in our meditations. What was that? And as if it were the most natural thing in the world, which of course to some of us it is, and to a lot more of us it isn't, he said, oh yes, those were the aliens. And we were like, I'm sorry, excuse me? And he said, yeah, there are good aliens and bad aliens. The bad aliens are actually very tall and they're here to hurt us. He said the short aliens are here. They travel by the power of the mantra. They chant and they travel this way. It's fascinating. And he said, and those follow me wherever I go to protect me. It was beautiful. I just wanted to share that. It seemed appropriate.
Wow.
Thank
So
you.
cool. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead, Maddie.
There we go. I feel like I've been so I grew up Christian as a backstory. So I always had God in my life, but he was a very strict God, a very in a box God that I thought was the real God. Long story short, the past few years, I've kind of, distanced myself from religion, but I forgot how I had told myself, I want to live like Jesus would, just without the constraints of religion. And throughout those few years, I had kind of forgotten. I had told myself that when I left the church. So recently I've been feeling nudges, very small nudges, just like, hey, I'm here. Like, if you ever need me, I'm here, kind of small voices. And at first it was kind of like, oh, I don't really know if I want to get back into that. I'm kind of, worried that I'm going to have the same feeling towards God that I had when I left the church. But instead it was more like quiet and peaceful and still, as you were saying. And I feel like I've been seeing him more, like I drive a lot for my job. So I'll just be listening to music and there'll just be lyrics and maybe the sun's shining at like the perfect time. And it'll just be a moment of, wow, that was meant for me to hear that from God, like through music or through just different things I'm thinking about through my day. And I feel like just those little moments keep me going and keep me connected to a bigger, creator being that I hadn't had the opportunity to feel that love from in a long time. So, yeah.
Yay. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
And Father Richard Rohr, one of the people that I use as a guiding light, Franciscan metaphysicist, talks about the difference between religion and the spiritual walk. And I think those of us here think in terms of spiritual walk rather than religion. He says religion is what places the rules and what places limits on God. And so, yay, welcome.
Yeah.
Glad that you're allowing yourself to experience the divine in that way. So,
Okay, I have one thing. I have a short story. I get to spend a lot of time with grandkids. And when my 12-year-old granddaughter was maybe 4 or 5 and I was taking her out to do something, when it feels right, I'll talk about God and God's love for us. And yeah, I grew up in a Catholic background, but my mother really taught me. She talked to me about God's love, and that was outside of the church at home. And anyway, so I'm talking to my granddaughter, Johanna, and I said, you can ask God to give you a message if you can get yourself to be very, very still. And so all of a sudden we were having a conversation. She got very quiet in the back, and I thought, oh, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. And after a few minutes, I said, did you get a message from God? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what did he say to you? And she said, I love you. And I thought that was just so beautiful because that was a perfect message, And I think we can. I remember I was about 18 and living in a community house. And I remember asking God to give me a dream. And I wrote the dream down, but I had the most vivid dream I have ever had in my entire life. And I wrote it all down, and it was difficult to understand it all. But somewhere in one of my journals, before I burn them, I hope I can find that dream and just take a look at it. But I really did get this most vivid dream that I haven't had one like it since. All different parts to it and stuff. And I simply asked God to give me a dream to help me understand my life. And anyway, so yes, there you go.
okay. Lori Kay again.
I just wanted to say, Phyllis, I think you should do some of your artwork around that. I bet it would be really powerful.
Oh, the soul collage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Talking about dreams, since that's come up, yes, that is another way to get information. One of my Lyft clients called me recently. She had had a dream 2 nights previously of her daughter, from whom she's sort of semi-estranged, covered in blood. And now the daughter had been in an abusive relationship, was now charting her own way. Well, it turns out the next day she gets a call from someone who knows the daughter. Daughter's going back to the abuser. And so we're doing lift-on therapy, long distance on that daughter, in hopes of being able to change her equation enough to get her out before she ends up bloodied or dead. But in the meantime, in your prayer thoughts, keep a prayerful protection thought for someone named Grace. Dear God, thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for providing us with this community to share, to care, to love together, to support each other in our spiritual walk. Thank you for giving us hope when we despair. Thank you for helping us heal when we hurt. Thank you for helping us to help others to heal and to be lifted from despair. Thank you for bringing each of us to our highest and best place this week. Thank you for helping us to lift the world up, piece by piece, this week. And help us to return to this community again as soon as possible so that we can share and grow together. Thank you for all the gifts and all the love you've given, dear God. And amen.